There are so many interesting ways to find antique and vintage merchandise for resale, and we're going to talk about some of them and what you should be looking for if you're selling online.
I am speaking today about sourcing for antiques and vintage specifically, and I know that mainly this is an eBay camp, so we're mostly talking about things that you might sell on eBay. So since you asked what this was, how many of you would like to ship this off? Well, I see one hand raised. It says, honestly, the reason I brought this is because I wanted to show you, sourcing for antiques and vintage on eBay may be a little different from what you do in the real world. Now, I bought this with the idea of taking it to shows and doing it in the real world, but I have to tell you, Kat just inspired me because Kat will sell furniture and ship it on eBay, or ship it, through some shipping system. And I have to admit, I got inspired by that. I had a huge wall clock, and he's this big at Gold Bank, and I sent it to New Hampshire, and I helped Raymond box it with all these things and painted together. And, somehow it made it, and I made sale because I had it at shows and in real-world places, and I could not sell it. Actually, that was when he saw it on YouTube, and she's like, I love that, I want it. Can you send it to New Hampshire? And I cannot. What I'm saying is, don't limit your scope on eBay. Part of the big question is, what kind of a dealer do I want to be, and what do I want to sell? So, how many of you are selling antiques and vintage on eBay currently? They probably about 2/3. How many of you who are not would like to sell antiques and vintage on eBay? Okay, very good. So pretty much everybody is open to the notion of selling things besides new stuff, because we just had very good conversation about retail arbitrage, and that's definitely a great way to make money. And for a lot of people, it's easy and it's clean, and that's what they want to do. Antiques and vintage are a little messier than that. They don't necessarily show up with a barcode. It might not even show up with an image search if no one has it on. Or I'm amazed how many times I do an image search because I do appraisals as well. And I take the item, I take a picture of it, I do it on an image search, and it brings up anything that's that color, but not the same thing at all. So it's not always quite as easy. However, the great thing with antiques and vintage and sourcing is there are lots of options. There's lots of different price levels. There's lots of different profit levels. You can, if you want to do this on a shoestring, or you're just getting started and you don't have a lot of seed capital, antiques and vintage are one of the few businesses you can get into. There's almost no barriers to competition. Now, you may not be able to buy Tiffany Chandelier's first thing, but you could probably find a strawberry shortcake mug somewhere that will sell for $8 or $10 or $12, and you probably can buy that at garage sale for a quarter or 50 cents if you go looking. Where are you folks sourced now? Are you, throw out some examples of where you're Salvation Army.
Local thrift stores.
Local thrift stores, the state sales I'm hearing.
Sale.
Auctions.
Local ice yard sale.
Set online.
Yard sales, yep.
Antique stores. Excellent. I'm glad to hear someone say that. A lot of people are afraid to shop at antique stores for resale. I hope by the end of this conversation you won't be. And how you source oftentimes has to do with what's available to you. How many of you live near a big city where there's a lot of options for shopping?
Probably about half. How many of you live in a small town where your options for shopping meet kind of limited? Yeah, that's me sometimes a year, depending on where I am. Well, we're finding, there's regional variations. Part of the question is what level of stock do you want? If you want to do antiques and vintage and you want to do a whole lot of it and you want to do it right now and you're willing to do a whole lot of different categories, well, you can go to an auction and you can probably buy a whole lot of stuff right now. On the other hand, if you really just want to pick and choose and be selective, or you only want to, I only want to sell glass, well, then you're going to have to maybe look in more locations and be really honed in on your particular thing. If part of your thing with eBay, and I know there's a lot of YouTube sellers who are like this, I'll buy anything as long as it's in the smallest priority, Dale. So that's a question. So I think, especially for those of you who are starting in the antiques and vintage, part of the question is be realistic with yourself. What are you willing to handle? Because where you source may depend in part of what you're willing to buy and sell. If you are willing to buy and sell anything, a local auction where anything might come up might be perfect for you. But if you really, well, I like pretty glass and I want to buy and sell pretty glass, or I want to be specialized and have people know me for this one kind of item so that I can get top dollar because I'm the market maker. I am a friend who does designer costume jewelry. If it doesn't have a signature or he can't prove who made it, he doesn't want it no matter how great it is because his specialty is designer costume jewelry. That's what I do. That's what I'm known for. Because of that, he can charge $400 and $500 for something that I would put on the same channel on eBay, and I might only get $250 or $300 because he has customers who go regularly because that's all he does. So think about that, because what kind of dealer you want to be may affect the kind of
Sourcing you do.
where you find it depends on what it is you're looking for. If you're looking for, say you live you folks live in a small town in Tennessee, I imagine that Cass I mentioned you really well there. You're going to find those in certain places, probably more likely in country auctions or country estates. On the other hand, they very kindly have brought me some Italian glass because they don't have a customer for it, but I have a customer for it down here. So if I'm looking for Italian glass, I'm probably looking for estate sales in larger cities, or I'm looking for a antique festival or a flea market where they specialize or they have people who would have that sort of thing. So the question before you decide how to source, and then we'll start talking about where to source, are what am I selling and what do I want to sell? How much am I selling and how much do I want to sell? If you want to sell a few nice items, you might want to specialize or focus on things that are going to bring you, say, I really got one and mess with it, I can't get at least $30 for it or $50 for it. That's going to affect. You're probably not going to find a ton of that in thrift stores. So thrift stores might not be on your list of sourcing as much as they might be for somebody who says, I want to buy things I can make 10 times the profit on. Well, then maybe you want to look at thrift stores and places where it'd be less expensive as opposed to an antique store. What options do I have that doesn't readily sell online? And again, that's another thing. Okay, so this piece, which you were asking about, is actually a prop for the set Miami Vice. There was the company in Miami back in the day before CGI. They made dozens of these and they would rent them out and they would tow them by the boat and then Doc Johnson go get the fish cart. And that's where this came from. Well, it's interesting and a novelty because it has this background and also just because it looks cool and I can see it being in a restaurant or a sports bar or a surf shop or something like that, so I bought it. But if I can't sell this online, I get a big shark fin sitting in my house unless I ask some other way. So again, be realistic about what kind of the dealer you are. You mainly only sell online, which most of us are here for that. Then you want to pick things that if it doesn't sell right away online, you're not going to mind either looking at or have a nice place to store. You might not buy a full shelf full of shark fins that take up this much room that might sit there for a really long time. What space do I have? I have a friend whose entire eBay operation is done in a closet about the size of that laundry room over there. And you think, how could she possibly do it? Well, she sells toothpick holders, Lowell's 90 figurines. She has a group of objects that she looks for that are really small, and she can keep it all consolidated in one place because she lives in a condo in the middle of the big city. She doesn't want to have a storage locker. And this is why it's so important to really think, especially if you're starting out in this, about what kind of the seller do I want to be and what is realistic for the capacity that I have to do it. And then, of course, what budget do I have? I had a friend that's another jewelry story, but that just seems to be a category. He didn't know anything about costume jewelry. I was working with him at an antique ball. Someone came in and said, and usually when someone came in to sell stuff, we would split the buy. Well, she said, I had a bunch of costume jewelry. Would you like to come see it? And I said, yes. And I made the appointment, and he said, you wouldn't invite me. And I said, you go do costume jewelry. And a month later, He was the leading costume jeweler at Fire. I guess he took that as a challenge. Decide that he really knowledgeable about it, got really interested in it, and all of a sudden that was his thing. That is, again, the big question before starting. But once you figure that out, then I'd given you a list, and this was kind of fun for me. I went through and I honestly did it in the order that I remembered chronologically doing these things in my career. And I've tried to give you a list of the different ways that I have fought merchandise over the years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each and pros and cons of each. And the first one is free stuff. Yes, that is how I got started, because as a kid, I started collecting hubcaps. We would see hubcaps used to fall off cars all the time. We would be driving down the road. I'd make my dad stop the car. I'd get the hubcap and I'd put it in. I'd hang it on a nail in the barn. And I thought that was a great collection, especially when I decided when I went to college to sell it. And it turned out that all these people who had lost their hubcaps wanted to buy their hubcaps. So I ended up selling a bunch of hubcaps and getting a bunch of money. And I thought, oh, that's pretty good. So you mentioned the curb. Some cities have cleanup days. Or like over at St. Petersburg, where I am in the wintertime, St. Pete, you literally put your furniture next to the dumpster and you call them and they come pick it up. You don't have to haul it anywhere. It's a great system. But because of that, a whole lot of people put useful and sometimes good used vintage stuff by the garbage can. And so I'm learned, as having a lot of dealers in St. Pete, what the better neighborhoods are when the garbage. You'll run into each other driving up and down. Because free is a very good price to pay. You have the really good profit margin if your cost is zero. Craigslist has a free stuff section. Now, most of it is free kittens, but once in a while, somebody has a bunch of free stuff left over that is interesting, and sometimes it's antique or vintage. I had one example. I think the biggest thing I've ever pulled out is building I lived in. You happen to live in a condominium and you're not in a house, you're oftentimes, usually in the laundry room, is sort of a free shelf where people put stuff they're tired of and you can just pick it up. One day, there was a Victorian bed, frame and rail, and headboard and footboard this tall, and it was American gold oak, and I threw it in my car, took it to the antique mall, set it out, and 30 minutes later, as I was writing the price tag, someone came up and said, "Will you take $150 for that?" And I happily put $150. The good thing with Craigslist is that it's something that's easy to look at, it's quick, you can do it anytime. Cons, of course, is you may end up dealing with strangers. The good thing is with the free stuff, you're going to pick up with them, so you're the weirdos if you're concerned, meet in a public place and let people know where you're going. But Craigslist can be a great source of free. Cap mentioned that the estate sales towards the end, a lot of times, and she came to mind, and she was very smart about it because she came right at half off day. So everything was on discount, because in that case, I knew that I was going to have to donate everything that was left at the end of the sale. But by the end of the sale, I had someone who came in and said, "I'll give you $100 for all of the books that are left." And I said, "Sure." And then I said, "By the way, there's 6 boxes on the back which you can have for free." Because I didn't have to move 6 boxes any books. But that means they got 6 boxes full of books. Now, were they great books? No, but they probably made some money off of that. With estate sales, the pros are quantity, the cons may be quality. You may not want everything that you can get free at the end of an estate sale, and they may say you have to take it all to get the thing you want, so be prepared. The tips on that is make friends with the estate sale people in your area, or at least let them know who you are. Let them know what you buy. A lot of people I know in this are really funny. They think it's really kitschy to not say they're a reseller. They go into an antique store and, I don't tell them I'm reselling, because then they're going to know what I buy and then they're going to price it by her next time. It's like, then just don't buy it next time. I always say I'm a reseller, because a lot of times they'll say, we give 20% off to resellers. Or, I have some stuff I've been having trouble selling here. How would you like to look at it? It's in the back room.
Beyond the usual suspects, there are a lot of fun ways that you can find interesting antique and vintage items that you may not have thought of before. Let's go over a few of those now. This first one I got a bunch of really cool travel posters out of a travel agency that was closing. The second one, I got a bunch of great Blanco out of an old furniture store that had been using it as props for 30 years. I also got a really great sofa out of a dumpster after the US Bank closed and sold it for $300. Once friends and family know that you're in this business, they will give you things to sell. You should probably give them a cut, but they will just come to you. If you aren't finding that, well then you can go to where there's an estate sale and offer to take away the leftovers, and then you get to pick through them. Shopping at local street fairs is great. The mercados in Tijuana are excellent. In one abandoned building in Kentucky, they let me go in and I found a really good piece of uranium glass and a prosthetic leg. Another antique shop that had been closed for years, turned out the family didn't know what to do with the stuff, and I got some really great Hungarian items, and I got some really cool railroad lanterns by responding to a Facebook Marketplace ad. In Spokane, a family having a yard sale said, "Oh, we have this old radio inside you might want to look at," and it was in my car in 5 minutes. It's also really fun to trade with other resellers because their stale stock, when it becomes your fresh stock, you have a different customer. And the states often publish lists of times that they are selling off unclaimed property where the owners are long gone and they just want to get rid of it. So be creative, have fun, and happy hunting. Bye for now.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.